The first step is to take regular printer paper. They're folded in half. Nothing terribly fancy. You can choose to use a bone folder or just use your nail to give it a nice crisp edge there. And what you'll want to do is fold what are called signatures. So you're going to fold 4 to 5 papers depending on the weight of the paper. This is some pretty thick printer paper, so I'm going to do, let's see, that's 3, 4, 4. I think that feels good. So I'm going to do a group of 4 folded pieces, and that's going to be one signature. And then I'll continue to do this several times over. So here's another group of 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. Another group of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This actually has 5. So I'll remove this one. And now we have, these are signatures, and that's the group of papers here. So do that several times more. I might have as many as 8 to 10 signatures depending on how wide you want your spine to be. So I'm going to keep folding. There's just nothing to it really, it's just folding papers. And like I said, you can use a bone folder. What I would suggest though is you don't do 2 at a time. Take the time to do 1 page at a time and make sure that those corners meet up as closely as you can get them. And then this is a bone folder. If you choose, you can use a bone folder, but I typically don't. So you'll want to do this process until you have enough papers to create the width of the book that you want. And now the next thing we're going to do is use a punch guide and a cradle to punch the holes. You'll need the awl, and if you didn't already make your punch guide here and your cradle here, you can follow the instructions to do that. So the punch guide is what we're going to use to make sure that all the holes match up prior to sewing up our signatures. The punch guide is what we're going to use to match up the holes so that all of our signatures holes are aligned, and you can see that there's a hole there. Now let's talk about the punch guide, because you'll have to make this yourself. I'll give you the instructions to do this, and the punch guide is reusable. So once you have it, you want to just mark that it's your punch guide for this standard sheet of paper. And you can put an arrow in here. It's probably a good idea. I have it here and I will, because you'll want to make sure that you always align the punch guide with that side up so that they all match. So I'm going to get my awl, and then we're going to talk about how we're going to punch it using our homemade cradle. There are fancy cradles that you can get. Now what I did is I used a book that is not precious to me. This was a gag gift that I got years ago from one of my girlfriends, although that's questionable given the subject matter here. But anyhow, it was a hilarious gift when she gave it to me. I didn't have any use to keep it, but I liked that I had the use of this outside book cover. So what I did is I put a little bit of masking tape there. And the reason you do that is you want to reinforce it. I don't know if you can see, but I've got some punch throughs there. So it's probably time for me to refresh this masking tape to give it a little more fortification there so the awl doesn't continue to just completely rip it to shreds. Okay, so I have a couple of awls here, and you can use whatever you have on hand, but I typically will use the sharper one. They're very similar, but you can see that has a very sharp edge. So, and it's actually got just a tiny bit of like a sandpapery edge to it. So that's going to really make a nice puncture. So we take our paper that we folded, it's all aligned so all the edges match. Now I'm going to take this guide, and using those marks, I'm going to punch right in the center there where those holes are. And the guide, you'll notice, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then one last hole here, 6 holes, and 7 spaces. So you're going to want to do this for all of the signatures. And they're faint, but you can see that I have all of the holes there. So I'm going to do this with the next signatures, and I'll meet you back once you're done doing yours. Okay, in this section we are going to do the sewing of the signatures. So I just take a regular needle. It's just a regular sewing needle, and I don't use any fancy thread. This, for my purposes, works just fine. Now what I will do though is I wax the thread, and you can see this is just regular old household candle. I do have beeswax, but for the purposes of this video I'm just going to use this candle, and I just work that thread right over that wax just to give it a little coat. Now we're going to take the first signature, and the important thing is to start, we're going to knot our thread. You see I already have a knot there, and it doesn't matter, that's a rather large knot, it's fine. What matters is that we don't start from the inside here of the fold. We want to come in from the outside. And what that does is it puts the knot that we see there, that big knot, it's going to put it on the back side of that signature. That's what we want. So we're going to come in the top, through the back, and that's okay. I know people are saying like, well, that's a large thread there, and it is, and that's okay. And then back through the next hole. This is why those pre-punched holes are so important, because then you can really see where you're supposed to be. And it will matter once you start to align all of the signatures together. So for now, we're just going to do this first one, and now you're going to go out the back. And it should look like that. And it's okay, you're going to have threads there, no problem. And this was the first knot, you can see the knot there. Now I'm going to take the next signature, and this is when you'll need a sturdy board so that we can get the signatures aligned. We're going to bull clip it with this open. Okay. Now you can see that hole aligns with this hole, and that's why you need to have this open, because you're going to be feeding it through. You're going to go into the hole of the next signature. I'm going to take and go in through the next. Now, the first thread is right here. You see that thread? This is from the first signature that we did. We're going to go under that thread, and you're going to make an X. You can't really see it, but once you do a few of these, it'll start to kind of show up. So just trust the process. I'm going to go in through the next hole. And you want to make sure that you pull in all the slack, and then repeat. We're going to come up and out the back side, and then grab the thread of the previous signature. Making that X, and then going into the hole that we've made. Now you're going to get to the top, and you want these tops to be secure. and tight, so you're going to work it through that, between those two again, because you want it to become nice and tight there. And then you just repeat the pattern. So you're going to remove the booklet, close this one, add the next one, open it to the center page. And all of this requires a little bit of time. Don't rush it. I'm rushing it now to get through this process, but take your time and align everything before you use the booklet to secure it. Okay. Now you've got your needle, and you're going to do the very same thing through the hole. Out the next hole, and then let's not forget the X. You'll X by going through the line of the last signature, and there we go. We'll put it nice and taut through the next hole. Make your X. And then be sure that you go through all of the holes. Don't skip a hole. Back in. Out of the last one. And then we want to tie a knot. Let's see, we want to tie a knot between this hole and then the last signature. So you're going to go between the first two that you saw there. You're going to make that loop and then come through, and that'll help you to create that X. So I've reinforced my threads, and then I just cut the ends off. It's not a problem. Nobody's ever going to see this back part. So the next thing is I aligned the papers, and then I placed them between two hardboards. In this case, I used my cradle, quote unquote, recycled book. And then I put two bull clips on either side, and that makes that spine really nice and firm, so that we can attach the glue. And in this case, I'm just going to use this pH neutral PVA glue. I use this when I'm doing watercolor paper books, which in this case it's just print paper, not a big deal. But this will keep your acid level neutral so that it doesn't discolor any, sketchbooks if you wanted to do something a little bit fancier down the road. And in this case, I just use a little scrap piece of paper, and I just give myself a nice glob to work with there. And then I use my tool. This is just, honestly, I think I got this at the dollar store, but it's a silicone glue applicator. I'm not really sure what the purpose is. Maybe it's something else, but I use it for glue. And I like it because it's reusable. In many cases, people will use popsicle sticks or any kind of other applicator, but I like this one because the glue just peels right off of it. And because it's flexible, I know that I'm going to get that real good coverage right in the seams there. Ideally, we would not be able to see in between the signatures. Can you see where that's rather, you know, good, that's good coverage there. So we're just going to keep applying that glue until you have a nice amount of coverage. Don't forget the ends, those are important as well. But this is you're gonna want this to dry till it's thoroughly dried. All right, now I've cut the mat board to fit the template that I know will work on the standard size. And now I'm just going to take and put some glue on the mat board. We're going to attach it to what will be the end book cover. So you want it to be a color that you like. And I just take my little squeegee guy and rub it in there. You want to make sure that you get rid of any lines that are going to be off-putting, because once that glue is on that backer board, even if you use a brayer, it's going to be kind of difficult, very difficult actually, to get off. So you want to make sure that you really get that on there. And again, this is the flexible archival glue, but it can be any glue. Now, I'm going to center it on the color that I've chosen for my book is going to be black. So I'm going to take my mat board and I'm just going to eyeball it. I just want to center it. Now this is a standard size piece of paper there, so it'll fit. If you're using something else like fabric, then you're going to want to cut it larger than the actual book cover. Now I'm going to take my guide and using a pencil, I'm going to use the guide as my cutting, to make my cutting lines there. So I just rotate it to each side, making sure that you've got it butted up against the mat board. These guides are a little flexible, so you want to make sure that you get it as close to that mat board as you can so that you can get some nice even lines. Now it's going to be hard to see because I am using a black cover. Oops, I missed one here. But what I want to do is take this to my cutting board and then just cut along those lines that you see there with the graphite lines. So just cut along those and we'll be back to glue the cover together. I'm back with my cut board, and now what I'd like to do is make those really tight corners. So I'm going to start by folding my sides in. You can use that bone folder to really give you a nice crisp fold. That's what you want. Get it up nice and tight, close to that board. And those corners are especially important, so you want to make sure that you get those nice and tight, and then give it a good fold over. And now we'll do the same with the top. Now, this is something to watch out for. You see how that tip is starting to fold out? We don't want that. So get back in there, get aggressive if you have to. You want to make sure that this little guy goes in and folds there. You see the difference there? So if you need to come in here and give them a punch down, then do that, because you want to make sure that when that fold is over, these ends, these corners are very nice and clean. Take your time, don't rush, especially on your first book. You're going to want to really make sure that you get those clean edges so you won't be discouraged. Now what you're going to do is come in here and just glue those ends together. We're not worried about this portion here. This portion will be covered. So for now, this is what the end of the book looks like, the cover. So I'll meet you back in a bit. Okay, now that my booklet is dry, I have the glue along the spine. I've taken matte board and I've measured it to fit the width of the spine. Now it will be a little bit longer because you want it to be the same length as your covers. So once I've done that, I will take some glue and adhere the spine to what in this case is going to be this blue center. And I'll just eyeball it again. You do want it to be pretty close to center because these are going to be visible on the outside of the book. So now what we have is the spine with the spine cover, your mat board with the cover. And in this case, I did it on the white side so that you can see. So now we're going to take the guide that comes in the kit. This is the spine aligner. That sounds nice, doesn't it? So we're going to take the spine aligner and aligning it top to bottom. I'm going to also mark the spine. Then I'm going to take the spine aligner, and there we go again. Get rid of this guy, and then we're going to mark him. Oops, I just broke my lead. All right, so now these can be removed. And now the next step is to glue these to the spine. When gluing these edges here, I do like to add a little wax paper because I want to make sure that I have that glue as close to the edge, I mean all the way to the edge there, as I possibly can before I align this board. So now I know where it goes. I can get rid of him now since he's got glue on him, and I'm going to just gently place him on those marks that we had. Apply a little bit of pressure. You can rest a book on here if you like, just to be certain that the glue takes. And we'll do the same with the other side. Once you have it glued, you want to take a brayer if you have a brayer and just go over the back side and make sure that things are all pretty smoothed out. You don't want any wrinkles on this side. I think it looks pretty good. Okay, now we've got what looks like a book. And now we're going to take our bone folder and gently we're going to fold these ends inside and down and give them a little encouragement to fold down. Same on the other side. And what you want is for those to bend and fold, and it'll take a second in order for it to find its home, but with more use this book takes on a better shape. But we'll come back to that. Okay. Now, we're not going to glue these yet. We'll be back. Okay, before we can assemble the book, I took some of the scrap paper from I got it to match my end papers. That's the color I chose. And basically all I did was just measure it the same distance as the spine. And what I'm going to do is, or rather the width, take those, there's nothing exciting about them. I'm just going to take them and fold them in half, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but the closest half as you can get, and then give it a nice, definite crease on the folded side. You want to do it to both. These are called headbands, and so you want those headbands. They will be secured here at the top of the spine, and then this other would be placed on the bottom edge of the spine. That has to happen before we can assemble the book. Okay, now I have those headbands in place. I'm going to take one of my end papers. Remember, this is just a folded piece of cardstock in the color that you like. That's your choice. And then I'm going to take some of the glue. That paper is just there to prevent it from getting alongside the rest of the page of the book. So I'm just going to use this as a guide. And if anything gets on it, well, that's not a big deal because we're going to use it. You want to make sure you get plenty, especially those top corners there. Yeah, those are critical. Okay, now I'm going to flip this over, line it up, and make sure that it fits. It should be like a nice tight little box in those corners. I don't know if you can see that there. But you lock them up. It's nice and firm. It's starting to feel like a book. And then I'm going to repeat the process on this side. I'll do it this way. Again, taking that end paper just as a little protector divide so we don't get glue everywhere. And then I'm going to just put that glue alongside there. Give it a little help, a little smudging. So it's nice and tacky. And then again, I'm going to flip it over and box it in just like that. Nice and even. Okay. Now when we put this end page in, this will still open. That's still a page that's open. If you look at a book, you'll see that they generally have those end pages, and that one is what attaches it. It's just the smallest little bit of glue. So you want to let this set. Make sure that it dries completely, and then we'll be back. We are almost done. Okay, so we're almost done. Now I wanted to point out, see how this has got wrinkles? It's not a big deal. This part of the book cover is going to be covered. Now we have these loose tabs, and now it's time to adhere them. So I want to take a little bit of the glue that we've been using, same as before, and you want to give yourself a nice generous amount of that glue. And the reason I held off on this part is I wanted to show you the importance of this spine. This is what's going to make it look really nice and neat. It had time to be used and be flexible. You want to, a book, the more it's used, the better it looks, I think. So you can see how crisp that edge is. That's what we want. That's what we want to see. So all these edges look good and tight. I made sure to put glue all the way to that edge there. Otherwise, you would have openings here that could get caught and then rip. You don't want that. So we're going to do the same and glue this last piece. Then what I'll do is I'm going to place my book, and the spine should match that width. And we're going to have very nice book. But before I get to that part, I want to look and see which side I like best. There's generally a side that looks better. We're going to wax this book, so all of that gunk that's gone on there, I wasn't as careful as I generally am, but we're going to wax it so we can get all that off. But I want to decide which is the top and which is the front of my book, and I think I like this side best. So I'm going to go with that. Okay, I'll be back. All right, so this is the finished book, but let me tell you a little bit about how I added those end papers. That was where we left off, was we added the glue to this page here. So in order for it to lay flat, you want to open it to about the center before you glue these blue end papers. In my case, they were blue. Before you glue these to this backboard, you want to open it up to center. And you can see I didn't do the best job. I mean, it's a little off, but I'm fine with it. I guess I could add another paper if I wanted to, but I don't. I remember that these books are generally my sketchbooks, so they're not precious really to me. But if you took your time, you could get a better center. Obviously, you can see on this case, not centered. But let me tell you why this is important. It's important that you open it up to center, or thereabouts, roughly, and center the book on the spine. And here's why. I made the mistake of not having done it in the past. Here's an example of that. Let me see. Yeah, here's a book. So because I had the paper, I didn't align it properly. When I opened it, this page was too tight because you have to account for the width of the spine. So you can see where the spine is actually not centered. It's on the edge of this backboard. So had it been closed properly, and then I had adhered the papers, then the backs would have been nice and clean like this one. It didn't rip. So you might find on your first couple of tries that this front page in particular is tricky, but my workaround was just to add an additional page here. So here's a secondary piece of paper, and then I just added it so that it fit there. And I actually like this feature. And I'll give you an example. If this is a journal, then I can hold my pencil there and it fits in the spine. So yeah, it wasn't a planned feature, but it works for me. And this is just another one of the books. And I generally make my journals the same color, and then on the spine I write my name and the year on them. And then I also have my personalized stamp that I use. Now in this case, because this book is meant for something entirely different, I don't know yet how I'm going to address it, but you can see these pages those are the stitches. You can see some of the stitches, but they're in there. They're nice and firm. They're not going to fall out. They're attached just like any book. So, and occasionally you'll find that you can see those strings. They don't bother me in the least. So if that's something that bothers you, I suppose you can choose a different method of seaming them together or glue pages together. I don't know. But anyhow, there's your finished book, and I really love it. Oh, one last thing. So one thing I do on my books is I take the same wax candle that I had before, and I take the wax and I just smudge it on there. And it looks messy at first, but the more you use the book, you can feel kind of a protective coat on this that you can't on the regular paper. And I like that because I think that it gives it a little bit, I don't know, it's a better feel actually. It feels real nice when you hold it. And this is just regular old candle wax, paraffin, I'm sure. So anyhow, you don't have to do this. It's completely optional. A little bit of heat on that will get it to melt. But I have spilt coffee on my binder before, and it just cleans right off because that wax gives it a nice coat, and it gives it a really kind of a nice sheen. I don't know if you can see that, but it's really nice. I prefer the wax rather than just the straight paper. So, all right, there you go.